the Solo Coach Podcast.
Howdy folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Solo Coach Podcast. Great to be here. Thank you for listening. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening from wherever you're tuning in. So today's episode is a solo episode with yours truly, David Garwood, the Solo Coach. And today I'm talking to you about what holds us back and what keeps us stuck. So to frame the episode, in life, when we're pondering a decision and we're feeling unhappy, there tends to be something that's holding us back and keeps us stuck where we are. It's like an invisible force of sorts. So today I'm going to explain what some of these seemingly invisible factors may be, this invisible force that's pulling on us and keeping us stuck where we are. And I would invite you, if there are any that you can relate to, please drop a note in the comments or drop me a DM on whatever platform you're listening to this on. I'd love to hear your thoughts and perhaps your suggestions of something I've missed out. I'm always up for feedback, and I would love to hear what your take on the episode is. And it's always wonderful to hear feedback of all sorts, whether that's positive or constructive, all welcome here. So let's get into it. So as usual, unsurprisingly, I've got a list of 5, and I'm going to run you through these 5 areas, and I'm going to go into each one in depth, and let's see where we get to. Let's roll with it. So what holds us back and keeps us stuck where we are? And I'll add, this might refer to what holds us back in terms of our career, our job, our relationships, or other areas of life like our health and wellness, our personal growth, or even our hobbies. So it applies to all of life, because we often find ourselves getting stuck in some way, coming against obstacles and then feeling like we can't get away from them, can't get past them. These hurdles, these challenges that seem insurmountable. And these, for me, are the 5 main things the main forces that have prevented me from moving forward in my life. And through knowledge of them and awareness of them, I've started to be able to move past them, acknowledge them for what they are, and say, I know what's keeping me stuck. This is what's playing out, or this is the story I'm telling myself. So to give you some context of what I'm talking about, let's jump into number 1. So number 1 is, unsurprisingly, fear. Things like fear of change. So the pain that we typically associate with change. When you get that notification from your boss, we're putting in a new system, we're trialing something, we're starting a new project. Or your partner instigates a change in the relationship. I want to do things differently. Let's have a conversation about how things can change, how I'd like things to change. It's very easy to think, oh God, this is going to be painful, this is going to hurt. And I would ask you, in those situations, has it ever been as painful as you suspected it would be? Has it been more or less painful? For me, I'd say it's a mix. There's certainly times when something has come along and I've thought, oh God, yeah, this is going to hurt. This is going to be a really difficult project. And then that fear has played out and it has been a really difficult project. But every time that has been the case, by the end of that project, by the end of seeing through that painful experience, I've always learnt something from it and I've always grown somehow. So the pain of change, as they used to say at school, short-term pain, long-term gain, has often never been as painful as I suspected, and B, led to sometimes unexpected growth and realizations and progress being made. The other types of fear are fear of loss. So loss of yourself in the process, loss of your identity if you've always been David the IT person or Alan the accounts person. What will you be when you're no longer in IT or in accounts? And the key thing there is to realise that you are not just your job. Your whole identity is not just what you do for a living. And if you were to stop doing your job tomorrow and stop doing what you do for a living and do something else instead, in reality, you'll still be the same person. And all of your skills, strengths and experiences will come along through life with you, and they're not just going to leave you overnight. They're going to come along for the ride. So you are still yourself, minus what you were doing before. And you might not be losing as much in the process as you thought you might. So when I left IT for the last time, a big part of my identity was wrapped up in being David the IT specialist, IT professional, IT expert. And in reality, I'm still that person. I just don't have that job title anymore. It was just a job title. It wasn't my whole life. But at the time, at certain times, it did feel like that. The other types of loss are money and status. So societally, we're all aiming to be really successful, to have climbed the corporate ladder, to have achieved an amount of money that enables us to buy the nice car, the nice house, to have loads of money left over for exotic holidays around the world, and to be saving up money for the future. So an abundance of money, we aspire to be flush with cash, because societally speaking, that is the definition of success. And obviously, money is an enabler. I wouldn't discourage you from earning money. But what I would say is that it doesn't necessarily define you. It's not how successful you are is not necessarily directly proportional to how much money that you're earning right now. There are teachers who are making a huge difference in the world, and their legacy will live on long after they've passed, and they love what they do. They're happy, and maybe their parents as well. They're a fantastic teacher and a fantastic parent, and they may never have much money, but they're incredibly successful. And it depends how you define success. I define someone who's successful as being someone who's loving what they're doing for a living. They're enjoying their life. They're thriving inside and outside of work, and they've got a work-life harmony going, in that sometimes work comes first, sometimes life comes first, but the two are in service of each other. So rather than seeking to strike this impossible work-life balance that none of us can ever quite find, I prefer the concept of a work-life harmony, which is the principle that both of these forces are operating in service of one another. Work enables life, life enables work. You enjoy what you do for a living, you enjoy your life outside work. The two are in partnership, a bit like a tandem. Two tandem riders are riding at the same pace in the same direction, and they're working as a team, despite the fact that sometimes one rider might get a little bit more tired than the other, and the other rider might have to put a bit of extra effort in. But the key thing is both of the riders reach the same destination at the same point, because they are attached. They are working as a team, riding a tandem in this case. The next type of fear is fear of failure. The fear of giving up and being branded as a quitter and a failure. I know when I left university, many years ago, I feared that I would spend the rest of my life justifying that decision in job interviews, to my friends, to my family, and I would always be David the quitter, David the failure. But in reality, that's not been the case. I learnt a great deal from leaving university, and I've spoken about this on several episodes before, and the key thing there was I learnt what I'm capable of, and in the moment where I decided to leave university, you could even say that was the point where I went from being a boy to a man, as I grew up in that moment and realised that my destiny, my life is my own. These decisions are mine to make, and by deciding that I wanted to leave university and pursue a different path, I realised that I have this enormous power to do what I want with my life, and that enormous power is in my hands, no one else's. I'm no longer a child. I'm no longer under my parents' roof, or or do I have to make decisions that they approve of or don't approve of. It was my choice to make, and I'm glad to this day that I made that decision, and it was the right decision. But it was very, very difficult at the time, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But the key thing is, I've not had to spend my life living as a quitter and a failure. On the contrary, I feel like my life has been a success, as I chose a different path and ended up working my way up in an IT career to a high position, and gained a lot of satisfaction and rewards and accolades in the process. So not even 0.1% of me feels like a failure or a quitter. They say self-confidence comes from making and keeping promises to yourself. And I'm starting to learn that now. If you decide, I am going to do this thing and I'm going to follow it through, see it through, finish it and find out, you'll find that in the process of actually doing that and keeping the promise to yourself, you will cultivate more self-confidence and self-belief. On the flip side, saying, I'm not going to eat any chocolate this week. That's it. No way. And then a couple of days later, you find yourself eating chocolate. You've broke that promise to yourself. You've cheated yourself. And in the process, you might have taken a little bit of a hit to your self-confidence and your self-belief. So that's something to be aware of. The other type of fear might be the fear of letting yourself or others down, especially if, like me, you're a bit of a people pleaser, or a lot of a people pleaser, as I used to be, and the fear of failing others and not reaching their expectations and not living up to others' expectations of you and others' belief in you can be a crippling fear and can keep you stuck fast where you are for years and years and years. But when you realise that your life really is your own, and in fact people are far more interested in themselves and what they're doing than they are in what you're doing, that's actually quite a liberating realisation to have. Because people aren't half as bothered about what you're doing as you think they are. And they'll look and they'll comment and they might pay an interest in you. But I guarantee that should you change your path and change your life and decide to do something different, it might be a little bit awkward with them at first, a little bit uncomfortable, but they'll eventually get on board with it. Because what choice have they got? They can either accept you as you are, in your current or your new guise. If you've gone from being an IT person to an accounts apprentice, or you've gone from being a full-time employee to a solo traveller. They can either accept that or refuse to accept it and fight against it, and then you'll naturally drift apart. It's kind of get with it or there's the door, in my experience. The other type of fear is the fear of embarrassment and humiliation. The fear of looking like a fool, being laughed at, being judged, people talking behind your back. Well, the interesting thing is, the sort of people who will laugh at you and talk behind your back are probably never going to be supportive of anything you do anyway. And they're not going to be your ideal clients if you start a business, and they're probably not going to be your ideal friends, because who wants friends that just laugh at them and talk about them behind their back? They're not worth having in your life. So in reality, if you do something outrageous, if you put yourself outside your comfort zone, you go start a business, or you change your career, if people start to laugh at you and take the mickey out of you and disrespect you openly, publicly, privately, whatever, you're probably doing yourself a favour, because you're weeding these people out, so their identities will come to the surface and you'll see these people for what they are. When I went solo travelling, a selection of friends from back home kept in touch, a couple of them on a almost daily basis, and were so interested in what I was doing and what I was about. And they showed me their true colours. And to this day, we've remained best of friends, because I realised that they, no matter what I do, whether I win or whether I fail, they're in support of me. They care about me and they love me. And I reciprocate that back to them. And then there were odd people, not many, odd people who did take the mickey out of me, did laugh at me, did talk about me behind my back. And some of them I found out at the time, some of them I found out later. But they're no longer in my life. They're no longer my friends, because I realised that they never were really my friends. Jay Shetty likes to say that people are here for a reason. People come into your life for one of three reasons: a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Some people come into your life to teach you a lesson, and then go back out of your life again. You come together, they teach you a lesson, you drift apart. Some people are here for a season. Again, they might come into your life, you might have some fun together, learn something from them, grow in some way. Or a lifetime. And other people will come into your life and won't ever leave your life again. They'll be with you for the long run. And I'm a great believer of that. And when it appears that someone's come into my life and it's time for them to leave my life and be, and we're just naturally drifting apart, then I no longer try to force it, because that's clearly the way it's meant to be. We're meant to go in our separate directions. So the last thing I'll say about fear is that fear is natural. It's wired into our psyche as a protective mechanism. Historically, when we were living in caves, fear is what made us run away from the lion or the tiger, the predator. Fear serves a purpose. It keeps us safe. It keeps us alive. And also, if we let it, it keeps us stuck. And it keeps us from following and pursuing our dreams. When I decided to start with Toastmasters, which I've recently joined, it's a public speaking school, I was scared. I was really scared about getting on stage and talking in front of people. I have infinite admiration for the people who stand on stage and project their voice and speak to the room. I just look up to them, and I always have. And I look up to them because I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be a fantastic public speaker. Yesterday, I delivered my first ever Toastmasters speech, what's called my icebreaker speech. And I spoke about my experiences of being in a storm in New Zealand. It was called Cyclone Gabrielle, and all what happened in the storm. And the underlying message of the story was that I was really scared, but I did my best in the moment. And I actually didn't realise how capable I was until after the fact. And looking back on the experience, I realised my own personal ability and skills. I realised what I was truly capable of, and I realised the power of leaning into discomfort and not trying to force a particular outcome, not trying to be in control of the whole situation, because quite frankly, when you're in the middle of a storm, you're not in control at all. And you can do what you want, what you can do. You can only do what you can do, and you can only control certain things, but the storm is going to blow around you and things are going to be a mess. And in my case, there was farm animals that were poorly on the farm. The power was out for days on end. There were trees down all over the place. Barriers were breached. The farm was in total chaos. And I could only do what I could do. There was physical limits to what I could achieve to help with that situation, so I did my best. I leaned and faced into the fear. And it served me well. It was a great experience, one of the best experiences of my life. It was horrible at the time, really scary at the time, but looking back in hindsight, it was one of the best experiences for me in terms of my personal growth, personal development. So number one of what holds us back, number one is fear. Number two is uncertainty. I believe that happiness comes from continuing to grow, and also having certainty. or some degree of certainty. 2, in my opinion, unhappiness comes from no growth and stagnation and too much uncertainty. When we're living in a world where everything feels like it's out of our control and we can't control and we're not sure about anything. So in my opinion, one of the things that keeps us stuck is uncertainty, such as just having too many unknowns and too many what ifs, too many questions and not enough answers. We're looking into a path, for example, a career change or starting a business, and the path is completely unclear and all of the steps are hidden, and all we can see is problems and obstacles in our way. And then how will we even know that if we embark on that path that it will be the right decision? Well, I'm here to tell you that you won't know until you try. And in my experience, the next step will reveal itself when you step onto the first stepping stone. If we use a stepping stone analogy, if you're trying to cross a river in the fog and you can't see one side to the other, you're only going to see the stepping stone ahead of you, maybe 1 or 2 stepping stones in front of that. And in order to see all the stepping stones and to get to the other side of the river, you're going to have faith, and you're going to have to just trust that as soon as you embark on that journey of crossing the river, especially if you've got a queue of people behind you, there ain't going to be any turning back. And you're just going to have to believe that you're going to reach the other side. Ed Mylett talks about it on his podcast. He talks about what differentiates the most successful, kind of the best from the rest. The most successful and the best have an ability to lean into things and try things when they don't have all the answers. They need to know less in order to get started. Whereas the rest, or the less successful, need to have all of the answers and all of the information before they even get started. And this is what plagues us and paralyzes us and keeps us stuck, is that we don't know how things are going to work out in order to start the journey. So when I went solo traveling, I tried to control everything, and I wasn't sure how things were going to work out. I tried to book way ahead, book flights and hostels and experiences. I tried to force the experience to be fun, and it wasn't fun, and things fell through, plans changed, my planning wasn't as good as it could have been, because guess what, things changed, flights were cancelled, or hostels that I'd booked fell through and had to cancel at the last minute. I tried so hard to control how the trip was going to be, to control the outcome, and it just didn't really work. And it was only when I let down the reins, I put down the reins and decided I'm no longer going to try and force the outcome. I'm no longer going to try and book weeks ahead and anticipate how I'm going to be feeling and when and what country I'm going to want to be in. That great things happened. So my travel got really good. My solo travel experience got really good when I created space in my schedule so that I could wake up in the morning and not have a plan for the day. So that then perhaps in the evening or over coffee in the morning, I'd meet someone in the hostel and say, hey, there's a really cool cathedral down the road, and then there's a river with some rowing boats on. Do you want to go check out the cathedral and then row down the river? And I checked my calendar, and obviously my schedule, it was empty. So I could say, yeah, why not? And off we'd go. And suddenly we'd become really good friends and realise we've got loads in common, have some great conversations, and then before you know it, we're off to another hostel together on a bus. And then before you know it, we've spent 2 or 3 weeks travelling together. We've made really good relationship, and we're having loads of fun together. Evening activities, day activities, and I feel like I've known this person for years. But that couldn't have happened if I'd have planned everything to the nth degree. And it was only when I realised that I stopped planning. I mean, I still had to do some planning so that I had somewhere to stay, or to make sure that I wasn't outstaying my visa. But I realised that there's ways around that. There's a website called onwardticket.com, and you can book a reservation on a flight, which counts as evidence that you're going to leave the country in order to get your visa stamp. And it is a valid reservation, and what it does, it's not designed so that you trick the system and outstay your visa. I'm not advocating that at all. it buys you time while you're in the country for, say, 30 or 90 days, depending on which country you're in and what the visa terms and conditions are. It buys you time to then figure out where you want to go next. Maybe while you're in the country for 30 days, you'll meet some other travellers who are heading east, heading to the next country to the east or the west. Whereas if you'd booked a flight already, you may or may not have been able to go with them. But if you'd not got that onward flight booked, you can decide to go with them. Maybe even join them on the same flight, bus or boat, depending on how you're crossing borders. So that for me freed me up and meant that the experience was much better. And then, because there was room for spontaneity and I wasn't trying to force or overly control the outcome, it was a process of realising that there's so much I can control, and then the vast majority of factors and things going on around me are actually outside of my control. I feel that a lot of dissatisfaction in life comes when we try and control factors outside of our control, like when we try and control and change other people, or when we try and change things that are so far outside of our control, and then we find ourselves disappointed and frustrated as we can't do it, or the rate of change is so very slow. And I'm not advocating not trying to change something like an organisation's culture, or not trying to influence another individual, but it's having that acceptance that this is going to take time, this is going to be a slow process, and this change might feel like it's going at a snail's pace, but I've done what I can do, I've done the best that I can do, and now the change will take place in its own time. It's going to be what it's going to be. So that moves me on to the third one. So keeping track of these 5 things that hold us back. We have number 1, fear. We have number 2, uncertainty. And number 3 is what I call untrue stories and flawed concepts. So we have these sayings that kick around. Things like, better the devil you know, and the grass is always greener on the other side, and it is what it is. Or even, work's not supposed to be fun. Work's just a means to an end. I could keep going on with them. You know the sort of sayings, those just offhanded sayings that we all say to each other on a slightly crappy day, when the weather's slightly crappy, on a slightly crappy Wednesday afternoon in winter. And we just sit there over lunch and we're all a bit drained, maybe in the office, and these kind of sayings kick around. It is what it is. You've done what you can do. You know, life's a bitch, then you die. The problem is with these stories, they're not true and they perpetuate our suffering. They keep us stuck where we are. They justify the suffering and they normalise the concept of giving up. They make giving up feel like a rational, valid approach. You know, you've tried your best. Well, you tried your best. You did your best. Never mind. Oh well, never mind. It is what it is. I believe that sometimes we can hide behind these stories and use them as an excuse for giving up, whereas in fact, a better storyline, a better internal narrative, an external narrative would be, I've tried and I've failed, but I've found something out, I've learnt in the process, so I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to try again tomorrow. And maybe the grass is always green on the other side, but I won't know unless I try. I'd rather find out than spend a whole life wondering what might have been, and I'll feel better in myself when I've found out what that other career, that other job, that the experience of building a business, I'll feel better when I've found out what it's like. I want to try it for myself. I've heard good things, I've heard bad things. You know, at the start of this journey I heard bad things about a networking institution, I won't name them, but they have very intense meetings and it's very expensive to be a member. And it's an accountability club, and you get disciplined if you don't attend several sessions in a row. You get in trouble, and you have to get other people referrals, and it's a bit like a job that you're paying to have. Now, it works really well for a lot of people, and for some tradespeople it's fantastic. For me, I didn't feel it was right and appropriate for what I do. But the point is that I had to try it for myself to find out. I'd heard rumours, I'd heard positive feedback, negative feedback, neutral feedback, but I went along to figure out for myself and formulate my own opinion of what it was like, because what works for one person doesn't work for another. That's why, incidentally, I believe in the power of coaching over the power of pure mentoring. Maybe a blend of coaching and mentoring is good, but I don't like being told what to do, and I don't necessarily feel that the way someone else has done something is the way that I'm going to do it. So I'd rather follow my heart, follow my gut, follow my own path than attempt to force myself onto someone else's path. As a lot of the dissatisfaction I've experienced in my life is when I've tried to force myself into following someone else's path or someone else's dream, and it's been a bit like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It's never felt right, and it's never felt like it was my journey and my decision. I almost felt like I was living out somebody else's storyline, like I was an actor in somebody else's play, or like I was following someone else's dream, but it wasn't really my own, and it always felt a bit forced and a bit fake. So I would challenge you, instead of coming out with these stories which sort of normalise giving up and perpetuate our suffering, I would advocate and encourage you to go and see for yourself, what is it really like? Because often the people who come out with these nonsense stories are the people who haven't done the thing that it is you want to do. They haven't tasted the grass on the other side. They don't know what it's like to work in the private sector if they've always worked in the public sector. They don't know what it's like to run a business if they've only ever worked full-time for another business. They don't know what it's like to solo travel if they've only ever been in the UK and just been on a couple of holidays to Spain twice a year. They don't know what it's like. So how about you go and find out for yourself what it's like and formulate your own opinion. And then maybe if the grass was in fact greener on the original side, at least you've found out, at least you know, so you're not occupying your mind and your mental capacity for the rest of your life wondering what might have been and what could have been if you would have tried, and wondering how green the grass really is on that other field. So that was number 3 on what holds us back. Number 4 for me is we don't believe that we are capable. We believe that we've not got the skills, the knowledge, the experience, and anything else, any number of other things. We think, we could look at a job description and say, I can't do that, I don't have those qualifications. Or we think of running a little business and think, I couldn't do that. I've not done it before. I've not got the experience. I've not been trained. I've not got a business degree. I've not even done GCSE business. I can't go solo travelling, as I've never even been out for a weekend away in the UK on my own. And we discount ourselves so easily and so quickly. We decide, I can't do that. I'm not capable of that. I've seen friends do it. I've seen opportunities come along and people have shunned them away and just ignored them and said, oh no, that's not for me, I can't do it. And I feel frustrated by that, because we are all more capable than we believe we are. If you said to me, could you go to New Zealand, could you work on a farm, could you tube feed milk to a calf because its mother can't lactate because she's got an infected udder? Could you inject antibiotics in the back of this full-size Highland cow? Could you keep 4 freezers running for 3 days while the power's off by cycling a a petrol generator between them? Could you take a chainsaw down the road and clear the road with the farmer next door so that you can get the pickup truck out to get to the vets? Could you travel by yourself for a year? Could you ride a motorbike in Vietnam through the middle of a city, through the middle of Hanoi in a rainstorm at night with a dodgy light? I would have said, well, maybe, possibly, probably not right now, because I've not done it before. I wouldn't have known. I think many people would say, no way. I wouldn't take my life in my hands. It'd be too dangerous. You know, any one of 10,000 reasons. There's always more reasons not to do something than there is to do something, which is why I don't believe in the power of pros and cons lists, because a cons list will always be a lot longer than a pros list. But in my opinion, the weight of the pros outweighs the cons. If you've got 20 cons and 2 pros, I believe that those 2 pros are more than likely each worth more than 10 of the cons. So I wouldn't say look at how many pros and cons you've got, but look at the worth. Don't look at the potential for what could go wrong. Look at the potential for what could go right. Because if we look at the potential for what could go wrong, we'd never do anything. We'd never change and we'd remain the same. And if we remain the same all the time and we do the same thing all the time, in a world that's as rapidly changing as the one that we live in, we might as well be running backwards and regressing. We've got to be changing and growing in order to keep up. And if we can be changing and growing rapidly, then we can actually get ahead of the curve. And if you're changing, you're pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, you're stretching yourself and you're trying to do the best that you can do in your life, you're trying to become your best self, you're trying to reach your full potential, in my opinion, you're already ahead of 99% of people who kind of drift and exist from day to day and live on autopilot. I think it's better to click that autopilot button off and be on manual pilot and fly your own plane to your own destination in your own way and get a hell of a kick out of saying, I did that, I flew that plane. Because when I was in New Zealand, I did for about 15 seconds. I took control of the little biplane that the farmer's next door neighbour took me up in New Zealand. He let me take control of the helm. And I had no idea and no training on how on earth to fly a plane, but for 15 seconds I did. Someone would have said to me, David, could you fly a plane? I'd say, oh, hell no! I wouldn't even know where to start. Look at all the buttons. Look at the controls. It looks nothing like my car. It hasn't even got a clutch or a gearbox or a brake pedal. No idea. And then I did. And I controlled the plane. I moved the wings to the left and the right. The pilot showed me what some of the controls were and some of the dials, which I've forgotten now. But I did it. He said to me, congratulations, David, you just flown. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a qualified pilot and that I could land the thing and take it off and, do all the pre-flight checks, but I flew a plane for 15 seconds. I took control of the helm. I did inject the antibiotics into the fully grown Highland cow. I did tube feed the calf. The calf did survive. We are all more capable than we believe we are. We just don't realise it yet. And we wrap ourselves up in these stories about what we can or can't do. And we look at job descriptions and we disqualify ourselves. Do you think Thomas Edison decided that he was qualified or unqualified to invent a light bulb? No. It took him 10,000 attempts, and I believe his famous line is, I didn't fail 9,999 times. I successfully found 9,999 ways to not make a light bulb. He reframed his failure as 9,999 successes, and guess what? On the 10,000th time, he invented the light bulb. So number four was we don't believe that we're capable. And finally, number 5 is that we don't believe that we are worthy or deserving. We don't believe that we can have it all. I used to believe that in order to have career success, I won't have relationship success, because I noticed that when my job was going really well was when I was single, or when my relationship was going well, my job was going not very well. And I believed that I couldn't have financial abundance, employment abundance, a great relationship, and be in good physical fitness all at once. It was impossible. Whereas in reality, is that true? Is that really true? Are you telling me that every person who's successful in business has got poor relationship with their family and their partner, and they've got poor personal health? Are you telling me that everyone who's fit and healthy, either their relationship or their business or their job, is suffering? Are you telling me that everyone who's got great abundance in their family and a great relationship with their partner has got either no money or another area of their life is lacking, and that in order to have success in one area of life we have to have lack in another? And are you telling me that you're not worthy, you don't deserve it, you're not entitled to it? You've maybe come from a background of a family that's not done very well, that's struggled, and that therefore you deserve to struggle as well. I don't believe any of that. I believe that we can have it all. We can have abundance in all the areas of our life, and that each and every one of us is worthy of that. If we're willing to work for it, we can attract it, we can create it, we can make it happen, and we can chip away at every area of our life and have a whole host of abundance. The full pizza I've talked about in previous episodes, the wheel of life, the pizza analogy. I believe we can all have a full pizza. And the only thing getting in the way of that, the only thing stopping us, is ourselves. And if we really believe it, if we really believe that we cannot have abundance and that we are going to have to fail in one area of life in order to be successful in other areas of life, I'll reframe that. If we really believe that we're going to have to lose something and struggle in one area of life in order to be successful in another, then it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy and we will make it happen. Or alternatively, we can see all of the countless examples of people who have achieved it all and are very successful in life in all areas of their life, and we can decide that we're going to become like that as well. So it really is down to you to decide what you want and what you believe you're worthy of and capable of. And if you don't believe in yourself, I will believe in you for you, because I believe that greatness is in each and every one of us. And finally, what holds us back? Number 1, fear. Number 2, uncertainty. Number 3, untrue stories and flawed concepts. Number 4, we don't believe we're capable. Number 5, we don't believe we're worthy and deserving. I'm going to give you a bonus, number 6. Number 6 is we kid ourselves. We kid ourselves into believing that if I keep doing what I'm doing, it'll eventually work out. It's probably not as bad as I'm making out it is. I could probably continue as I am, and maybe things will get better. If I win, maybe I'll buy a ticket for the lottery again, and maybe if I win the lottery this week, that'll fix everything. If I could just earn a little bit more money, if I just get that promotion at work, then I'll be happy and all will be well. And when I'm happy at work, then I'll be happy at home and my relationship will get better, and then I'll start going to the gym and I'll get fitter, and then I'll start saving for the future and I'll become financially abundant, and that'll all happen in that order. The problem is, I've done this, I've fallen into this trap, and I was kidding myself that things would work out. I was kidding myself that if I just work even more hours and even harder in my career, that I'll then earn so much money that I can buy the best car, the newest car, and then I can go and show off, and I'll attract a fantastic partner because I've got this beautiful car, and then we'll live together in happiness and bliss, and that everything will fall into place if I just keep doing what I'm doing and I do more of it. And the problem is that's not always the case. And sometimes you can be running full speed with your head down, going towards a destination. No compromise, no stopping, full speed. But if you don't take the time to put your head up above the parapet and to really realise and really reflect on what's working and what's not working, what should I be doing more of or what should I be doing less of in the context of the pizza, so all the areas of the life. If you're working so damned hard that every single other area of your life is suffering, your health is in tatters, your relationships in tatters, your finances are in tatters, you're working so hard, the chances are nothing's going to change unless you do. As Einstein says, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. And it just doesn't happen. And the lottery win might not happen. And the chances are if it does, it'll just make you more of what you are. If you're a nice person, if you're a giver and a carer, it'll make you more of that. If you're an AH, if you're an unpleasant person and you're angry and you're stressed, the chances are, over time, it'll make you more of that. Because suddenly you've got all this money and then you've got another huge decision. What do I do? Am I going to stay in my job? Am I going to leave my job? What am I going to invest this money, live on the investments? And then, I'll go out and buy the best car and the best house I can. But then you can find something you've not worked towards when you instantly acquired it, because you've not put everything in place to be able to raise your level of financial management ability. You've suddenly been given something on a platter. You quite often self-sabotage yourself back to where you were in the first place. So one of my podcasts, I'm a huge fan of the guy called Jay Alderton, and his podcast, he says if you were given a six-pack overnight, within a couple of weeks you'd probably lose it, because you haven't learned how to maintain a six-pack. If you were given a £10 million a year business overnight, if that was given to you, you'd probably lose it and the business would probably end up crumbling, because you haven't done what you need to do. You haven't done all of the work, made the mistakes, tried, failed, been successful. You haven't essentially become fit enough in a business sense to handle that business. You haven't become physically fit enough to handle that six-pack and to know how to maintain it. And in the case of a lottery win, you haven't become financially fit enough in order to be able to manage those funds. It might buy you short-term or temporary happiness, but the chances are it won't buy you the long-term fulfilment that you believe it will. But coming back to the point of we kid ourselves, the bottom line is, if we don't make a change, if we continue as we are, the chances are we're going to continue to get more of the same results. If you don't like your output, change your input. If you don't like your results, change your actions. So that for me has been the 6 reasons that hold us back: fear, uncertainty, untrue stories and flawed concepts. We don't believe that we are capable, we don't believe that we are worthy or deserving, and we kid ourselves. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you again in a future episode. Bye for now.
The Solo Coach Podcast.